Hi everyone. Welcome to Lit Whiskey Wednesday, where the lit stands for literature. As always, this is your host, Adrian Martinez, coming to you live from Studio B. I just wanted to say thank you for tuning in to the first episode of Lit Whiskey Wednesday. Remember, if you like this content, make sure to subscribe, to follow, leave me a message. All of that is very highly appreciated. And if you don't like anything of what I'm saying, pretend you've never heard of me. Today, we will be covering my absolute favorite whiskey, and what's funny enough, my absolute favorite book of all time. Today's whiskey comes to us all the way from Florida, and it is an absolute gem of a whiskey. It is blended and infused with black currants, so it gets a very unique flavor profile. On the nose, you get a lot of that black currant, but almost like a cherry flavor, that tart and sweetness that you come to expect from cherries and black currants that is just absolutely amazing and very unique because it is not artificially flavored. It is flavored from being infused with the fruit. On the palate, this whiskey is very similar. It has a very strong currant, almost cherry, fruity flavor profile that just matches the nose. And like I said, it is just absolutely unique. I'm talking about the one and only Von Payne. Von Payne is a relatively new whiskey that comes, like I said, from Stillwater, Florida. They, as far as I understand, they officially launched in January of 2022 and have done really well for themselves in a market that is just so saturated with giants. So let's talk a little bit about the whiskey. I've already talked about the nose, I've already talked about the flavor. There's something very unique about the vibe that this whiskey gives off. For starters, the color. The color is a very deep ruby red that almost kind of wants to emulate the color of blood. You know what? I absolutely give them props for that because it might have been a happy accident from the infusion with the black currants, but it is just so on brand for the marketing. I remember that I first tried this whiskey at my bachelor party. I was gathered with some of my best friends in the world, some of the guys that I've known since like high school or middle school. So getting to share something this unique was actually really special. I remember pouring the whiskey into a glass for everybody to try, and my buddy Frank. Well, I can't repeat the exact words he said because I don't know what cuss words I'm allowed to say in the internet. But he said, what is that? What color is that? That's not normal." But let me tell y'all, everyone in that group absolutely loved Von Payne. Every time that any one of them comes to the house, they always ask me to pour them a little bit because I obviously have to have it at the house. I love this whiskey so much that I had to make sure that it was available at my wedding. And to take things into a little bit of a further detail, Von Payne only has two whiskeys. Von Payne Black, which is their flagship product, and then they have Von Payne Reserve, which is a bourbon. That is an actual bourbon. Von Payne Black is technically not a bourbon because it's blended and infused, but Von Payne Reserve is a bourbon. It is at 113 proof, and as far as I understand, they've only released two batches, each one set at about 1,900 bottles. I think I could be wrong on that one. I was able and lucky enough to snatch a bottle from their second batch, and I am just absolutely in love with Von Payne to the point that I am saving that bottle for whenever my wife and I are expecting our first child. And for those of you that may be wondering, no, I am not sponsored by Von Payne, but if Von Payne is listening and they would like to sponsor me, I will say yes every single time. So let's talk a little bit more about what makes Von Payne Black so unique and what gives it that very unique gothic vibe. For starters, the bottle looks like a gravestone. You may need to squint a little bit or step a little bit back, but the bottle is very unique and, again, looks like a gravestone. On top of the gravestone, they have a spout. Instead of like a cork or a screw top, they have a spout that is in the shape of a gargoyle. And the whiskey comes out the mouth of the gargoyle. I think whoever did the marketing for Von Payne deserves a raise because that was absolute genius. One thing I forgot to mention is that Von Payne, the company, bought a early 20th century building in Louisville, Kentucky, and this building already kind of looks like spooky and gothic-y and almost kind of like a castle, and they're transforming it into an actual castle. And the whole idea is that they are going to host tastings and events there, but how cool is that? Honestly, this bottle of whiskey looks like it should be inside of an abandoned mansion that is 100% haunted and once was owned by a serial killer. Which kind of brings me to the book for this episode. So let's think on this for a second. The bottle looks like a gravestone. The color of the whiskey looks like dark ruby red, almost blood. The spout is in the shape of a gargoyle that almost like vomits the whiskey. What's the first book that comes to mind? If you did not say Dracula, you are wrong. But in my humble opinion, I think Dracula is a little too easy of an answer. Don't get me wrong, great book, it's a classic for a reason. But I think that we can dig a little deeper. We can choose a different book that fits this very unique vibe. So with that being said, let me introduce to you my favorite book by my favorite author, The Only One Left by Riley Sager. If you haven't read the book, let me give you a brief description. This book takes place in 1983, where a caregiver is assigned to take care of an elderly woman that was accused of massacring her family in the late 20s. This story takes place in the family mansion that happens to be on the side of a cliff. This mansion is absolutely falling apart, and as the caregiver, Kit, is continuing to take care of Lenora Hope, who is the alleged family murderer, she starts piecing together the mystery of what happened that night when Lenora's family was brutally murdered. Think Lizzie Borden, but she lived to be like 90 whatever years old and is now finally wanting to tell her story. Riley Sager, like I said, is one of my favorite authors, and something that he does incredibly well, and in my opinion, better than any other modern author, is give a very good description of the location where his books are taking place, almost as if they are a character of their own. So like I said, this book is a decaying mansion on the side of a cliff, but he has books in an abandoned home that was allegedly haunted, in a summer camp where people went missing, in a train, almost think like Murder on the Orient Express, etc., etc. Riley Sager is just phenomenal when it comes to writing settings and locations. I very personally think all his books are worth a read, but if I were to give you a recommendation on where to start, I'd say The Only One Left. I have actually had the pleasure of meeting Riley Sager 3 times now, all here in Texas. He is very, very good about going on tour when he releases a new book and meeting his fans and signing books. And honestly, he is really funny and really entertaining to listen talk about his books. And not just about his books, but he also helps promote other authors and other works that are up and coming. So Riley Sager, just phenomenal guy, but also phenomenal author. So, why do Payne Black and The Only One Left by Riley Sager match so well? Let's start with the obvious one. Both Payne Black and The Only One Left, the vibes are just gothic galore. You see the bottle of Payne and you drink it and you feel like you're in the mansion that Lenora Hope lives in. Also, something that may be a little odd for a whiskey and a book that have that very strong gothic vibe going on, both the whiskey and the book are great any time of the year. And what I mean by that is Riley Sager tends to release his books around the summertime, and this book was no exception. So I read that book in maybe 2 or 3 days, and I believe it was like June or July, something like that. And I loved it just the same. I didn't have to wait for fall time to read it and to really dive myself in. I absolutely loved it. And I read it again in the wintertime, and it was perfect. As far as Payne Black goes, you can have it neat. That's usually how I have it, or sometimes on the rocks. And like I said, you get that very strong, fruity, blackcurrant, cherry flavor. Sometimes a little bit of that oak and cinnamon. But the main flavor profile of this whiskey is fruity. So that allows it to be very versatile. Like I said earlier, I I usually have it on the rocks or neat, but I've definitely used it in cocktails. And what's funny is if you go to their website, vonpayne.com, you will find a plethora of different recipes, and a lot of them are like separated by not vibes, but like there's like a Christmas cocktails list. There's a Valentine's cocktail list, and I wrote some of the ones that they have here. So like for summer, they have like a blackcurrant lemonade recipe or a blackcurrant tonic. But for winter, they have apple cider mule, spiced old fashioned, Santa's nightcap that was pretty great, and a peppermint old fashioned. And they have others for like Valentine's. They have for different seasons. So that's something that I thought was very unique both about the whiskey and about the book. That they're very versatile. They seem like they fit just in this one box, which is gothic, spooky, fall. But no, you can enjoy them at any time in any way because they're just that flexible, that versatile, and overall that good. Well, y'all, that is just about what I have for today's episode. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the first episode of Lit Whiskey Wednesday. Please check out Von Payne Black, drink responsibly, and check out Riley Sager. Not yes, the only one left, but not just it. All his books are fantastic. Von Payne Black, absolutely fantastic. Check them both out. And as always, I am your host, Adrian Martinez, coming to you live from Studio B. This has been Lit Whiskey Wednesday, where Lit stands for literature. Thank y'all again. I will catch you on the next one.